Hi everyone, welcome to our newest edition of NetGalley and BookTrib present 15 Minutes with, a Merrill-Moss Media production. We are excited to welcome author Katherine Reay back to the series. We previously spoke with Katherine about the Bronte Plot last year, around this time actually, and Katherine is also the author of Lizzy Jane and Dear Mr. Knightley. Today we are discussing her newest novel, which is now on sale, A Portrait of Emily Price. Thank you so much for joining us, Katherine. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be back.
Absolutely. So first, let's talk about A Portrait of Emily Price. Can you tell the viewers what the book is about and the central characters that we'll be introduced to?
Okay. My one line for it is, after a whirlwind marriage, Emily Price heads to Italy with her new husband and learns that the sweet life is found when she lets go. And it really is the story of a young woman who, she's an art restorer, so her job is very much like her life. It is very detailed, very controlled. And so something new comes her way. Attraction is not necessarily controllable, and she meets an Italian man named Ben Vassallo, falls in love with him, and in heading to Italy, there's this new world. It takes her out of everything she knows, and she sort of learns to accept herself and others, her own foibles, their foibles. It's just sort of an embracing life type of story.
Absolutely. Yeah. So to me, one of the main characters actually throughout the book, as you mentioned, is the setting in the backdrop of Italy. How did you kind of make sure that you stayed true to the beauty and the culture of Italy as you wrote the novel?
Well, I hope I did, first and foremost. I truly hope I did. Emily Price is the first novel I have written where I have not lived in that place.
Okay.
Dear Mr. Knightley was in Chicago, Lizzy Jane in Seattle, and the Bronte Plot in London, and I've lived in all of those places. Italy I traveled to when we lived in Europe. I traveled there multiple times, probably 6 or 7. And then the summer of 2015, I was able to spend about a month there, which was incredible. So I hope I've been true to it. I think I have been true from an American's point of view to some degree. Emily Price is American, and so mistakes she may see may be the same ones I saw. I truly believe that to understand a culture, you need to live there. Go to the grocery store and go to the market. And so I know there are mistakes, but I hope that they are, I hope people approach them with grace, because I loved my time in Italy.
Oh, that's amazing. So you've just started a new blog on your site called the 20-Second Blog. Can you give us a little bit of background as to the name and how it's connected to your latest novel?
Okay, so the 20-Second Blog is actually September 22nd. September 22nd is the day that C.S. Lewis says he was in the sidecar with his older brother Warnie and became a Christian. It's on September 22nd. Wow. J.R.R. Tolkien, his best friend, then honored that day by giving it the birthday for Bilbo Baggins and Frodo. Those two characters, that's their birthday. So that's where the 22nd came from. And partially because all my books thus far have C.S. Lewis roots. That is sort of my secret, which I've just put out there. But say, Dear Mr. Knightley, a lot of the letters came from the idea of the screw tape letters and how far I could push a character. Lizzy Jane came from a question I had about C.S. Lewis's book, The Four Loves. And if you took love away from a woman, what would compel her to put it back in all the 4 different forms? Mm-hmm. The Bronte Plot was a journey on this side of eternity, looking at how you make changes in your life and different choices. And A Portrait of Emily Price came from when I was reading his book, Till We Have Faces. There's this really powerful scene in the end when the queen opens up this book to the gods to justify her actions. And in opening the book, in reading it, she realizes she has no justification, and that the things she has done have been more self-centered than, say, other-focused. And that brought me to the idea of what would it take for a woman, a young woman in our world today, to see something new, sort of crack her open to experience something new. And rather than break her down and see all that she'd done wrong,
Right.
I gave her an Italian guy and a great adventure. But it was that idea of what would entice you to look at things from a different perspective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so for all of those who don't know, you can read that on katherinereay.com/the 20-second blog. So make sure you go check it out. What do you ultimately want the reader to take away from A Portrait of Emily Price after reading the novel?
Okay, I would love many things. I would love for them to have had a wonderful sensorial journey in Italy. I would love for them to believe that someone like Emily Price lives, exists. Also, that the idea of chasing joy and the idea of finding a new adventure is real, and it can happen in their lives. I write books about women going through, they seem like extraordinary circumstances, but the emotions are universal. So I really hope someone walks away with that anticipation of joy and that idea that an adventure is right around the corner, no matter what it might look like. And also the thought that they could have the courage to chase it.
Definitely. Yeah, it is, but that's a lot, and I'm certain that you achieve it. Can you explain the role for those that are just checking in with you and learning more about you, the role that Jane Austen has played for you and continues to play in your writing, and how her stories inspire yours?
You know, it all started with Dear Mr. Knightley. I started that book in 2009 after I'd been injured, and I was at home for several months recovering. And I started reading, first of all, stories that were familiar to me. And Jane Austen I'd read as a teenager. And so I picked up all her books again and started reading them. And that's where Dear Mr. Knightley came. Okay. And those characters and the way she wrote and the way she connected resonated so deeply with me that thread has definitely continued. I think on a larger scale, it's also the classics in general. And I guess from my background, I do gravitate towards the British sort of classic literature of the 19th century. And you know, she's sort of a stalwart in that area. And so they are coming of age stories, really, and they're turning point stories for the women. And, you know, the Bronte sisters do the same thing for theirs in a slightly different context, more gothic, etc. The novels are very different. Right. But it's these allusions to classic literature because I think they speak to us today. I think Jane Austen is still relevant, and I think she's relevant, number one, because she's brilliant. She pinned human nature, just like a little butterfly to a board. She got us, and we haven't changed in those 200 years. So I think I keep returning to her partially for that. It's sort of like, you know, going back to the master and learning again and again.
Absolutely.
But she really did do a good job with that. And I think she and those other great writers, they form a common language that we relate to, and that those touch points, they are immediately recognizable, and they welcome us into a story.
Yeah, absolutely. What about, so you do a lot of things besides writing, and those who aren't familiar with you might be surprised about some of your hobbies. When you do have some free time, what are some things that you like to do?
There's a lot of stuff I like to do. Gosh, lately, well, I love to run. I love to cook. I'm not a very good cook. I mean, quite honestly, in my family, I am third place cook. Husband's number one, 15-year-old daughter's number two, then it's me. So I love to cook. Gosh, I think you're referring to the fact that I have a black belt in Taekwondo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally unusual, especially when you meet me. I mean, but it's really fun to kick things. So, yeah, gosh, what else do I like to do? I love to read. I really do. I'm an avid reader. And as you might have seen my bio, I seem to love to move. And I'm hoping that I'm not moving anymore. I have moved 17 times. I've lived in, I've lived in Ireland and England, are the only two places abroad. But I've lived in all the corners of the United States. And places in the middle, like Texas. So I'd like to not move anymore.
A lot of that, would it be work related or literally just because you decided you were ready to try somewhere else?
All work related. Growing up, work related for my father.
Okay.
And then through my marriage, work related for my husband.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. How was that? That must have really informed your writing, I would imagine. That must really help.
It has actually. Perspective. And as I said to you before, that usually I consider setting a character. And so usually I have placed my settings in places I've lived because perspective and worldview are so different. Even from the east coast of Washington State to the west, along the Pacific Ocean, the perspectives are different. And so that has informed a lot of my writing. It also has informed a lot of how I accept people, because our experiences, we are just different from where we grow up.
Absolutely.
The Midwest, I think, thinks differently than the Pacific Northwest or the South. And I've lived in Georgia and Texas and Washington State. And right now I live in the Midwest. So.
So speaking of reading, what are some things that you are currently reading or on your TBR list? And do you stay within your genre that you write, or do you go outside?
I don't. I read across all genres. Lately, one of the best books I've read lately was The Blind Side, Michael Lewis's, and we know it as the movie with Michael Orr, and brilliant movie. The book was a revelation. It was more about the evolution of football than and using Michael Orr throughout that. But I began to understand football in a way I never had before.
Oh, interesting.
So loved that book. Really, really well done. I have my next book that I'm reading. I just finished Did You Ever Have a Family by Bill Clegg, and The Girls by Emma Cline.
Great.
And so you can tell I'm reading all over the place. And my next book I'm finally opening, and I've been waiting, Amor Towles' Gentleman in Moscow. And I'm so excited to read that.
Absolutely. That'll be fun. So what about for people looking to come meet you, maybe get a book signed? Do you have some things planned in 2016 and 2017?
I do. I will be here in Chicago in Lake Forest on November 11th. Actually, on November 3rd, I'm going to be in Westport, Massachusetts at Partners. In May, I'll be in Atlanta, Georgia at RT Book Lovers Convention. And I know there are more, and I'm blanking. But they're always on my website. And I actually personally keep that up to date. Not very well, and it's not very formatted where I plug in, but I do that. Yeah.
So what about for your writing guidelines? What are you booked up through 2016 into 2017? What are you writing? Can you talk about it? Is there something new coming?
Yeah, there is something. I have just handed in a manuscript, actually. So in November 2017, there will be another book.
Oh, great.
And already I have an idea for the next one. So, yeah, things are continuing.
Excellent. Things to look forward to. That's fantastic. What about things that you haven't written about yet? Or do you have a kind of a writing goals list or a genre that you'd like to try one day maybe that you're toying with? Anything like that?
Nonfiction.
Okay.
I not my story, but someone has come to me with a story that is really compelling and it's intriguing. And so I'm kind of wondering if I could do nonfiction and fiction. I'm not sure, but that would not be in my genre, and I like that.
Absolutely.
I also would love to write. I love that I consider my books sort of not cozy per se, but they're not big. They look at a life. And they look at a moment in a life. Okay. And I would love to try something that cracks open something a little bigger. But that's kind of daunting, and I have no idea if I'll get to that.
You never know. You never know what life will bring for you.
Exactly. That is so true.
So for those that have followed you from the beginning, read your books, excited for the next book and the next book and the next book, what do you kind of have to say to the fans and those diehard readers who keep coming back? Is there anything you'd like to tell them?
Yeah, thank you. I don't take the trust for granted that when you read something of mine, number one, that's a huge honor that you would spend that time with me. And I give my best to every project, knowing that if you return, I really want to honor that. So yeah, thank you. That would be what I'd say.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure that they are looking forward to A Portrait of Emily Price. They have either already devoured it or it's coming to them right now. So
Nice.
everyone go grab a copy. You won't be disappointed. And unfortunately, because the time goes so quickly on these, Katherine, we are out of time. But I can't thank you enough for joining us here again. And hopefully we get to do it again next November. And thank you very much. It was a blast.
Thank you so much. This was lovely. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had a great time. And thank you all, everyone, for watching. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.